You're listening to Africa's Business Rockstars podcast with Nefa Ahoy, a show that shares the stories of successful Africans in business and how they did it. It's our story told our way to inspire our people. This podcast is sponsored by IDS Consulting Ghana Limited, a company dedicated to supporting small and medium-sized enterprises with accounting and business advisory services at an affordable rate. Visit www.idsconsultingga.com to learn more.
But I'm also the type of person who feels it's okay to fail, to try, and if it doesn't work out, I believe you can pick yourself up and move on, right? So try it for a few years. Doesn't work out. My belief, or the way I thought about it was, I will still have learned a lot.
You're listening to Africa's Business Rockstars. My name is Nefa Ahoy, and our guest today is an MIT alumnus who has changed the face of mobile payments within Ghana. He's currently the co-founder and CEO of expressPay, a growing fintech company in West Africa. Hi, Curtis.
Hi, Nefa.
Welcome to Africa's Business Rockstars.
Thank you.
How you doing?
Not too bad.
Yes? How's the week been?
It's been a busy week. It's been a tough week, but not too bad.
Yeah? We're hoping we can allow you to, unwind and de-stress, on our podcast.
I expect this will be a very fun conversation. So.
Extremely. All right. So when we hear expressPay, the name Curtis is associated with this, one of 4 partners, correct? Yes?
That's right.
Okay. But before we delve into that, tell us about 10-year-old Curtis growing up. Yeah.
10-year-old Curtis. Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting way to start. But I would say I was one of those kids who loved to run around. So I was one of those kids climbing trees, jumping down trees, getting chased by dogs, crossing gutters, riding my bicycle outside the house when my mom didn't want me to. That was the type of kid I was.
Okay.
And then one of the things I enjoyed, actually, we used to walk to school.
Oh.
Back then, I used to walk to school. So I went to school at Alcid Academy in Jolu. So I grew up in Jolu.
Okay.
And we used to walk to school. So you walk with a bunch of other kids. You're having fun on the way.
Yeah.
You walk back home and so on. Sometimes you do a couple of naughty things like go and press someone's doorbell and run. The typical things young, silly kids do. But it was good. It wasn't bad at all.
Right.
Yeah.
And then post-Alcid?
So post-Alcid, I went to St. Andrew's GSS or Presec GSS. So some people call it Presec GSS. So it was funny. It was interesting because I left a private primary school to go to a public school. And that was a good experience for me as a young child because that's when, I guess how we see it in Ghana, it became hard in a way because that's when I started, because my family moved from Jol. We moved to Harcho, so it was much further away. But Presec GSS or St. Andrews was in the New Road area, Medina area, right? So then we started taking Trotro and so on. So it was also quite a good experience. And it was an exciting time for us because our parents wanted us to go to Presec.
Okay.
Right, because Presec was a very good school, is still a very good school. And they had set up this GSS, which was affiliated to Presec. So our first year was great in that the class was very competitive because you had folks who had, or parents who had similar ideas, who moved their kids from a bunch of different schools and sent us all to St. Andrews. So it made a very fun, competitive class.
Right.
And it was different because it was a public school. It was good exposure for myself and some of our friends as well, to also have an understanding of people from different backgrounds.
Yeah.
So I thought it helped shape me.
Yeah.
And it was a great experience. Our teachers were great. We loved it.
Right. So after that, did you get into Presec for secondary school?
I did. Interestingly enough, I did. But I didn't stay for long.
Oh.
So it was almost like much ado about nothing, right? But I'm one of those who believes that all your experiences are building blocks. And you learn from all of them. You grow from all of them. So I got into Presec. I was at Presec for 2 terms. So the hardest 2 terms. Form 1, I did first term, second term, and then I left for SOS.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why the switch?
Again, and this I would credit to my parents. I think that's what parents should do. As a parent now, I appreciate it and I understand it. Parents always want to get the best opportunities for their kids.
Yeah.
So it was at a time where there were lots of strikes.
Okay.
So university lecturers were going on strike and there was a long backlog. Students had to wait a couple of years before they got into university.
Right.
And my dad was super frustrated with that experience and thought it would be great for me to get a chance to go to university abroad. Right. So he thought moving me to SOS will give me the most opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's what my parents chose to do. So they had a conversation with me about it because typically most people go to SOS after JSS.
Okay.
Now, I had gone to SSS. A few people at SOS also do this, where they go to SSS. So they asked if I didn't mind. When I said I didn't mind, I would go take the exam and we'll see. Yeah. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And we took it from there.
So I know getting into SOS, it's one of the tough processes. Like you mentioned, you need to take an exam and all of that. So what was it like prepping for that? How was the exam process like and all?
Wow, you're taking me back many, many years, huh? Nefa. So prepping for the exam wasn't too bad.
Okay.
So I can tell you, so we can jump into it. So I was in Presec, so in my dorm room. When you're done, so I'm done with my regular SSS courses, homework, whatever. So nighttime when you're meant to turn off your lights in the dorm room, I have a torchlight. I turn on my torchlight and then I'm studying for the SOS exam.
Right.
And that's how I essentially did it. But interestingly, so I had 3 other friends at Presec who were also studying for the exam. So we were sort of encouraging each other and so on, encouraging each other about studying for the exam. So that's why I used to do that. Just turn off the lights, study for the exam, and then call it a day. Yeah. And so I just did that. And then when it was D-Day, went over to take the exam and was fortunate enough to get in.
Yeah. What did you study in SOS?
So SOS has IGCSE, which has 9 subjects. I don't remember all the subjects, to be honest. That's quite bad.
Which one did you like?
So at Presec as well, I was a science student.
Okay.
I was always inclined towards science and math. Okay. But at SOS, when you go to IGCSE, it's like the old O-level, right? So you have a whole bunch of courses. I actually enjoyed all of them, to be honest. I struggled with languages. It's still something I want to master. I want to be able to become fluent in French, for instance. But outside French, I think I was fine with almost with everything else. Okay. I did enjoy the sciences. I love physics the most. Okay. But interestingly, I performed better in chemistry than physics. I never understood that back then. Right. Anyway. But in terms of math, physics, all of that stuff I enjoyed. But I also, one of the interesting things about going to an SOS is the broad base. So I was studying literature, whereas in SSS, you wouldn't be doing that, right? So I was studying literature and so on. I enjoyed all of that. It was a great experience. I loved SOS. I still say SOS is the best school in the country, even to this day. Right. Yeah.
So physics and chemistry, but then we see you in the financial industry. There's really no relationship between those two.
There is, and I'll tell you why. All right. Remember, I said I believe all your experiences are building blocks. Right. And I'm sure you're going to ask me about university.
Yes, I will.
I believe that what you're learning as you go along is the ability to solve problems, the ability to think critically, and so on. It's not so much subject specific, and especially in the US, you get an appreciation for people who do very different things. You find a music major at an investment bank, at a top investment bank, because it's about your ability to think through and how solve to apply. The problem. Yeah. Exactly. I think that's what we need as a nation, actually, even in Ghana. We need to get to the point where we're training children, we're training everyone to be able to think critically. Yeah. So regardless of the space you're in, you have the right skill sets to be able to thrive.
Yeah. 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 So post-SOS, that's when you go into MIT, correct?
Yes.
Had you always known that you'd go into one of the top-ranking schools in the United States?
It's not a guarantee. It's never a guarantee.
No, not to enter.
It's an aspiration, but it's never a guarantee.
All right.
So, again, you're taking me back. I can tell you about the process. So the way we thought about the university process, because a lot of us actually needed financial aid to get into university abroad, to be able to go. Yeah. Because it's so much more expensive than what our parents could afford.
Definitely.
And so you have a plan. And the good thing about an SOS, and don't get me wrong, you have brilliant students from the other schools who also make it to universities abroad. A lot of them by their sheer
drive,
exactly, right? SOS, you're a bit more fortunate because SOS had been doing this for a little while. Okay. So you have a career guidance counselor and so on who can talk to you about the application process, how to think through it and so on. So what we will do is you have a strategy. You have some schools that are very hard to get into that you're going to apply to. Some schools that are moderate to get into. They have some schools that are meant to be easier to get into. Right. And you apply to a bunch of them. So if I recall, I think I applied to at least 10 schools. Okay. Potentially more. All right. But you spread it out. You apply to a bunch of schools. Everyone is aspiring to go to their best school or their school of choice.
Of course.
But if that doesn't work out, life has to go on. You can go to another school and still be okay.
So do you recall like your top 3 schools that you applied to and said, if I get any of these, that would be amazing?
I don't remember my top 3, but I know I really wanted to do MIT.
Okay.
And so MIT was definitely my top choice. And also because I wanted to be an engineer.
Okay.
And MIT is top when it comes to engineering. So for me, that was really where I wanted to go.
Right.
And so I was super excited when I got in.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder than it seems. So when you're here, you're aspiring, you want to go there. When you go there, you realize, wow, Charlie.
Yeah.
You think you have level in Ghana, but when you go there, levels there, because it's now worldwide competition, right?
Yeah.
But I don't remember the other. I think I applied to Princeton. I don't remember. I applied to Harvard. I don't remember if I applied to Princeton. I think I did. I applied to Brown as some of the top schools I applied to. Interestingly, I didn't do Stanford.
Okay, so you get into MIT. You mentioned it's quite tough to get in there. So you need to either have funding or parents can pay. So in your instance, how did you get into MIT in terms of how much it was going to cost you?
So remember first, they have what you call need blind admissions. So you still have to get in on merit.
Right.
So the schools would evaluate your application based on merit.
Right.
And then if you get in, then they try and put together a financial aid package for you.
Okay.
And the financial aid package, I know it's probably changed a little bit since then, but back then it's a mix of grants or scholarships, loans, and then what you call work study. So whilst you're on campus, you're expected to be working as well to try and get some funds to aid or add up to what you need to pay for the full year.
Yeah.
So that's how MIT structured it, and that's how mine was structured. So I had a mix of all three. I had some loans after school, I had the scholarship component, and I used to work on campus as well. Okay. And then work on the summers as well. Yeah.
Okay. So you had some loans, meaning that once you're done, you have to repay those loans,
Absolutely.
Right? So how did you go about doing that? Young guy from Ghana, gone to a top school. Okay, now I have debt.
You get a job and you pound.
So what are the type of jobs that you did and how did you pound?
It's almost impossible, at least back then, to try and pay off the loans whilst you're in school. Okay. So the thought is not to pay off the loans whilst you're in school. You get the loans, it's obviously accruing interest.
Right.
And then afterwards, you get a job and try and pay it off.
Yeah.
So I did grad school right after. Okay. So a lot of people may finish undergrad, get a job for a few years and go to grad school. I chose to do grad school right after, which was quite interesting because I applied for a new program, which was called the Singapore MIT Alliance program. Okay. And so it meant getting a degree from MIT and spending a year in Singapore and getting a degree from Singapore as well. And for me at the time, I know I haven't answered your loan question, but I'll come to it shortly. Yeah. At the time, I was still very fascinated by how we move our country forward, how we develop as a nation and so on. And Singapore had done such an amazing job. So I jumped at it. So I did that first. And then I came back to the US and took a job in management consulting. Okay. So I started out with Bain & Company and worked at Bain & Company a few years. And then I moved to Visa and worked with Visa a few years before moving back to Ghana. So whilst I was working is when I then started paying back the loan. So once I got into full-time employment, started making, and you have to make sure student debt is one of those debts you can just, there's nothing you can do about it. It lives with you forever, essentially. So I had to continue paying to try and clear it off. Right. And I did, yeah.
So you went to Singapore, came back to MIT, right?
Back to the US.
Back to the US and moved back to Ghana. But it's never really that simple to just decide to get up from a developed country like the United States, come back to our West African country where you're saying you need to change.
It's home.
When you're saying you need to change, you felt the need to change and contribute your quota, I guess, to our economy. So are you saying it wasn't a difficult decision for you at all?
So not necessarily it wasn't a difficult decision, but I think I've always thought of myself as someone who likes to solve problems. And even in university, MIT is the kind of university that's also training you to try and solve problems, take on tough problems and solve problems. So I always knew I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. And the question was where. But I also had an inclination to want to do it at home rather than abroad. Right. The thought being, we have a lot of problems that we need solutions to. If we have the ability to solve them or the ability to attempt to solve them, we should take it. Yeah. And my mindset was, in the US, you have lots of people who have the ability and are doing very well in the US and are thriving in the US. Back home, we have people who are trying to solve problems as well. But being home, there's a connection. And so I always had a pool. It's not easy because you're giving up a lot. And you're taking a lot of risk. Yes. Right? So you're living a very comfortable lifestyle. Exactly. You're getting your paycheck. You're living the American dream, to be honest, right? Yes. Anything you want, you can get kind of thing. You're fine. You're comfortable. You're good. So it is still a tough decision. But I'm also the type of person who feels it's okay to fail. Okay. To try, and if it doesn't work out, I believe you can pick yourself up and move on, right? So try it for a few years. Doesn't work out. My belief, or the way I thought about it, was I would still have learned a lot, and I had the confidence that I will still be marketable enough to be able to take on an exciting opportunity or to get an exciting opportunity elsewhere,
right?
Because of my combined experiences plus my experience in Africa or in Ghana.
Right.
Because a lot of, even if you thought about Western companies, and I was working with Western companies, were starting to get more and more interested in emerging markets, right? Not so much Ghana at the time, but it was growing.
Okay.
And so I thought that experience would still be valuable, regardless of how it turned out.
Yeah. Didn't your parents think you were crazy?
Oh, they absolutely, it's interesting you say that. They absolutely did. And interestingly, their initial response was discouraging.
Yeah.
Like most typical African parents who feel, remember the journey we've talked about?
Yeah.
My parents thinking, I want to give my child the best opportunities or my children the best opportunities. I want to position them so they can get the most out of it. They've done all of that. They've succeeded to send you abroad, right? You go there, you say you're coming back. What do you mean you're coming back? After all this work, after all that they put in, you're coming back. So there was resistance.
Okay.
But I think they realized that I really was bent on it. And I'm one of those kind of stubborn people who, if I set my mind to something, I'm going to try and make it happen. And so honestly, I didn't give them much of a choice.
Okay.
Right? So, because you're grown up at that point, right? So you can make the decision. So I made the call. Initially, they were discouraging, but once I made the move, they were super supportive, because at that point, you want to see your child succeed.
Yeah, of course.
Right? So they are my biggest champions. Super excited by what we are doing. Can't complain now. And I'm thrilled to see that it's actually working out, at least up to this point. Yeah.
So you've relocated, you're done with university, you've worked, gotten some work experience, you've paid off your loans, you relocated back to home, Ghana, but you're back to nothing, right? Basically. So how...
As in starting from scratch.
Starting from scratch. Yeah. So what was that like?
It was fine, because I came in fact, I came with a lot of optimism. I came in expecting that it would be easier than it turned out to be. So like most entrepreneurs generally are very bullish about the idea. They're excited. They're usually overly optimistic about how quickly the idea will work out.
Yep.
Any entrepreneur listening would agree. I mean, they'll have the best projections and so on. And you are super excited and you feel like you've really thought through your thing. You have all this conviction. It's going to work.
Yeah.
Right? Failure is not an option. That was me. Right?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this funny little story, right?
Okay.
So I'd spoken to a friend who had done a similar thing earlier than us. And I think during one of my visits, he did management consulting as well in the US.
Yeah.
Quit his job, moved back to Ghana to start his business.
Yeah.
And I met him to try and get a sense of, okay, what's it been like?
Yeah.
He told me that coming down, I should assume I'm not going to make any money for 2 years.
Okay.
And make sure I have enough money for all my obligations for those 2 years.
Okay.
And no matter how exciting and good and smart I think I am, right? Just assume that you won't get the revenues and things you're expecting that quickly. And it'll take you 2 years before you make anything. So before you make the decision, make sure you've at least saved enough for 2 years to be able to sort of take care of yourself, meet your obligations.
Yeah.
And funny enough, he told me in that conversation that I probably will not believe what he's telling me.
Yeah.
But it's true. And lo and behold, it was true.
Yeah, I was going to ask
it takes a long time. It takes a long time. And exactly what he said, I was thinking, no, Bio, you can't be serious, right? That can possibly be the case. And it is tougher than you expect. And I'm sure we'll go into that.
Yeah.
But it is tougher than you expect. It takes longer than you expect. Yeah. So it's a prudent approach. But it's very hard to really say, I've saved up money for 2 years, right? And then you have to be disciplined as well. So when I came in, I wasn't sort of going out all the time and so on. It's balanced, your head's down, you're focused, you're trying to get work done. Otherwise, you blow your money very, very quickly. So for us, we hadn't raised money, so you're using your own money for the business and so on. Yeah.
So I see you keep referring to us. So I'm sure this is your partners.
Correct.
Right. So this is all of you who were out in the United States.
Yeah. So maybe I can tell you a bit about how we thought through it. So I had come down. So I was working at Visa, as I mentioned, and I was looking at emerging markets and so on, Ghana being one of them. But I thought there was opportunity. But globally, the thought was there were other markets that were drawing the attention of the organization, right? We're grabbing that organization's attention a little more. And I thought there was an opportunity to do this in Ghana because I'll come home to try and pay for something and it was such a hassle or such a mess. And so I thought about it, and then I spoke to a couple of my friends. So I have 3 co-founders.
Okay.
Kojo Hesse, William Tete, and Kwe Hesse. And so I spoke to them, and I knew that they were also thinking about this space. So Kojo and William went to MIT with me a couple of years ahead of me. They were all at MIT, so we all knew each other. Also all from Ghana.
Okay.
And so I knew they were looking at this space as well. And so I spoke to them about it. And it wasn't straightforward. It wasn't straight away, yes, let's do it. In fact, I think the first time I spoke about it, it took at least 6-8 months before we actually got together to say, let's do this.
Okay.
But I think Kojo had moved before. Kojo had moved to Ghana. And like most people who are here, when you come from abroad, they probably think you're not really serious, right? You are talking about it, these lofty ideas, but you don't really mean it.
Yeah.
So I think it's after I moved down was when Kojo realized, okay, because he's really serious about this and so on. And that's how we got together and said, let's take a stab at it.
Okay.
And do it. And we were bringing our collective experiences to bear. So Kojo and Will, for instance, are MIT computer science majors. So it's the best there is.
Okay.
It's as good as it gets, right? And so we made a great team because I'm actually a mechanical engineer by training.
Okay.
Right? So I knew how to program and so on, but that was not my core strength. And when you think of my experience as well, I'd gone into business, more so than computer programming and so on. And so we made a great team with Kwe as well, who was very good at the creatives and the front end development, and said, let's take a stab at this and make it happen.
But it seems like you said, you suffered to actually convince them, because first it was all talk, right? Did they have to see something before they actually believed and said, we can do this together?
No, not suffered per se, because the first time I talked about it, I was still in the US. In fact, I had come down. I think I talked about it before I moved down, but I'd come down. I had a small prototype. I met a few banks. I met a couple of service providers, ECG, Ghana Water.
Okay.
And they all seemed quite excited by the idea and thought this could work.
Right.
So that gave me confidence to say yes, because I believe that there was a clear need. Because what we found in the market was the banks had done a decent job. People had ATM cards. Okay. Right? A decent number of ATM cards were in the system. But everyone just used their cards for cash. Okay. So everyone just went to the ATM, pulled out cash to pay for everything. In fact, for services you could pay at the bank, it was not unusual for someone to show up at the bank branch, go to the ATM outside the bank branch, take out cash, and walk into the bank branch, because it was an easier process than going to collect cash from your bank or tell them to transfer money from your account elsewhere. Yeah. And we thought it was absurd. The story I like to say is, before expressPay, you could not pay for your internet on the internet. Right? I don't know if you remember those days, but you had to leave, drive somewhere, go get a voucher. Your internet is finished. You're now driving around looking for a voucher before you go back to your computer. It was ridiculous. Meanwhile, you have money in your bank account. You have a card. You have the internet. And we just couldn't believe it. And we thought it was a no-brainer. And so once we said, let's take a stab at it, we were full steam ahead.
So this was in what year?
This was 2012.
2012.
Yeah.
Okay. And immediately you started, you knew it would be called expressPay?
Yeah, so the names we toyed around with were QuickPay and expressPay. There are a couple other variations, but we thought expressPay had a better ring to it. And so that's why we ended up with expressPay. And I feel as if my memory is a little dated now, but I think there was a bank product that was called QuickPay at the time. So it was one of the other reasons I think we
just sort of,
But that was how we thought through it. We went through a lot of names, different combinations. And we thought the whole concept of, you want it to be express, you want it to be fast.
Instant,
So you want people to just, by the virtue of the name, they get it right away. Right? And that's how we came up with the name expressPay.
Yeah. You know, most, well, I shouldn't say most, but in some instances where you're starting a business and you actually think about partnering with someone, you're most likely to probably choose your family member because you know, I can trust this person. It's my sibling. If he messes up, I can deal with him. But you go into partnerships with friends or individuals that you met through university, in your case, for instance. What was that like? Was it challenging? Have you had some upsides and some downsides, disagreements, you know, normal things that are happening with business partnerships that in the long run, actually, some people tend to fall out. So what has it been like, the four of you together since 2012? You've been together for quite a while.
And I think that in itself, even if you put the company aside, keeping a partnership together in itself is success. Because partnerships are so hard to pull off. So I did say university, but Kojo, for instance, went to SOS as well. So I'd known Kojo since high school. And we have a mix. Kwe and Kojo are brothers.
Okay.
Right? So we have a mix of the family and friends.
Sure.
And then I met Will in high school, but we've known each other for what is it? 20 years now. So that's a long time. Obviously, when we started, it hadn't been 20 because we've been at this for a little while.
Yeah.
But we also had similar thinking skill sets and similar mindsets because we went to the same engineering school, the same can-do attitude, the same drive to solve problems.
Yeah.
So that was already a unifying force.
Yeah.
It is tough because we all feel like we are smart, right? So there are times where everybody feels like, no. Yes, but it's a balance.
Yeah.
And I think you need to be honest and you need to have people you can trust. And I think we are honest with each other. We do fight. You will fight in partnerships. You will have disagreements and you have to talk through it and then move on from it.
Yeah.
I think it's more you need to be able to resolve those disagreements versus just have it seething underneath forever and then it blows up and then everybody says they're going their own separate ways. That's not us. I think we sort of are the type who would speak through it, will speak our mind, will call each other out.
Yeah.
And we hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
And we've also been, where there are times where maybe saying there are clashes, we've said, okay, maybe let's separate who owns what, not owns from an ownership perspective, but who is managing this piece, who is getting the final view or saying. And we're actually quite collaborative in a lot of our decision making. So it's not one person always makes all the decisions.
Right.
I think that sometimes can cause some problems. But as we've grown and so on, obviously there are lots of responsibilities. So you designate the responsibilities and then you hold each other accountable. It's not easy, but I'm glad we've been able to do as well as we've done. I think it's encouraging. There are other partnerships as well that you can point to. Obviously, there are lots that haven't worked out, but I think it's doable. Yeah. But you need to have the right people with you. You need to have the right team, the right partners, people you can trust and go far with.
So for your first 2 years, based on Bill's breakdown of coming back and starting your business. So there's 4 of you who want to do this.
Yeah.
How did you pull your resources together? How did you finance the very beginning, of expressPay?
So I think we were kind of fortunate because we had worked abroad.
Okay.
So we had some savings. So we pumped in our own money.
How much did you start with?
I don't have a figure because it was, you're pumping in as you go along. You're pumping in as you go along. So I don't have a set number. But what we did was we basically were bootstrapping it, putting money when we needed the money, And then in 2014, we did a small friends and family raise.
Okay.
So that gives you a sense. So to Bill's credits, 2 years after you decide, okay, I now have something I think can work. So let me get a little bit of money to give it a little bit of a push. And so 2014, we did a small friends and family raise, which was helpful, very helpful. And that's what allowed us to even start doing social media ads and so on. But before that, it was a hustle every day. Hustle every day. Obviously, no pay for anyone, right? You're just pounding the pavement. And a lot of that time, actually, we spent time building the platform, but a lot of the time was also spent talking to businesses, getting the businesses on the platform, right? So we haven't talked about what expressPay is, but but basically it was getting all these businesses on the platform because the nature of our business was we're trying to make it easy for consumers to access all these services, to pay for their internet, to pay for their DSTV, to pay for their airtime, right? To pay for their electricity bill, their water bill. But the first thing you need to do is get that electricity company on, the internet company on. So it was pounding the pavement to get these businesses on before you had something that was interesting enough to offer to consumers. And so that took us a lot longer than we thought.
Where a lot longer is about how long?
So I'll give you 2 examples. So one of them was a multinational company who shall not be named. And we thought, telling them we have this concept where your customers can pay you 24/7 anytime, whether it's a weekend or a holiday, they can pay you and their service can continue running and you get more revenue. We thought it would be a no-brainer. We thought it would be, where do I sign? Let's get this going quickly. It took us 20 months to get that multinational on board the platform. I couldn't believe it.
But why is that?
The leadership, I think, got it fairly quickly.
Okay.
But the bureaucratic process of getting us onboarded and so on took a long time. It wasn't clear whether internally some people were trying to do something, the usual things you hear or not. But it was a frustratingly long process to get them on board. And we were very shocked by that. We thought, hey, this should be quick. So the same thing I talked about where an entrepreneur is so excited and they think, this idea is great. You tell someone, they say, oh, this is great. You think max 3 months, they're done. 20 months. I couldn't believe it. Another provider, again, who shall not be named, believe it or not, Kojo and I went there at least 50 times in 1 year. 50, 50. Because we would go there sometimes 3 times a week. So say you go there Monday, they tell you to come back on Wednesday. You go on Wednesday. So it's not by 50 times, you didn't have a meeting each time, but we were meant to go because we're expecting feedback.
Yeah.
So you go there Monday, they tell you to come back Wednesday. You come back Wednesday. Oh, he's not in, so come on Friday. So that's 3 times in 1 week.
Yeah.
Now, if you multiply that by 4, that's already 12 times in 1 month. And we're that persistent. So imagine you're chasing a client like this for 5-6 months. You are going there a lot.
Yeah.
At some point, they told us we should just call because it was getting embarrassing. These were frustrating moments, but we were so convinced. Again, this was an example where leadership wanted it, but getting everybody
on board,
took a while. And we weren't sure if there were other reasons people didn't want such a platform because it made it too easy for customers to pay. We weren't quite sure.
Yeah.
But those are some of the things that made it challenging. But we just were so persistent and we just kept pounding the pavement. I think that what was great and got us to where we are now.
Yeah. So at what point in time in this journey where you have sort of like teething problems, challenges, sometimes getting a no, I'm sure, from potential partners. But at what point in time did you all realize that this actually works? We have actually arrived and expressPay is here.
I don't think we are there yet. Okay. I would even say we are still not there. It works. Okay. It's great. We built a company, but for our ambitions, there's so much more. There's so much opportunity. No, but in terms of
we can actually kick this thing, it can actually start running now.
Oh, in terms of it can... Well, it's always been... It's a tough one because I don't think we've reached a turning point where we said it can start running. We were the kind of guys who were excited when our first 5 friends tried it and said, wow, this is great, right? Where you're counting. And I'm the kind of person, so the way I was, when I come here, my friend, and I tell you we're doing this, I'm not giving you an option. I take your phone and I put the app on there and I set you up and I say, try it. Yeah. Let's do it. Yeah. And that's how we set off, right? We were literally forcing our friends and families to use the app, to use the platform. Yeah. And so the first 10, the first 20, the first 100 was all exciting. What was encouraging, I think, and that's what was interesting for us, is as soon as customers tried it, they loved it. Right. And so we had some customers who were kind enough to send us emails. So giving us positive feedback, positive reinforcement, kudos guys, this is great. I can't believe this hasn't been in Ghana this long. So that was always very encouraging. And we have some of those quotes where people email us. And then the exciting bit is people also tell us that they love the fact that they can pay for airtime. Right. But they would love to be able to pay their water bill, for instance. Yeah. And that also drove us and even helped us figure out which merchants or which services to go to next. Yeah. So to put in perspective, we started out with services like airtime, with internet, with water. And then people said they wanted to be able to transfer money. And that's what got us into the money transfer space, right? Because we're also listening to our users, taking that feedback and making sure we're trying to meet their needs. Because that's when you remain relevant to your customers. And so for us, it was just a gradual, again, every little bit counts type of approach. Every new customer counts. And what was exciting for us as well is people who tried the platform loved the platform and naturally told their friends about it. Right. And so we even have a refer a friend program on the app where you can refer to your friends so they can sign up and so on. And that's been very early. But regardless of that program, people naturally say you're talking to your friends and you go to your house, you're meant to watch a program and their DSTV is off. Oh, why haven't you paid your... Oh, I need to send the drivers. Oh, have you not heard of expressPay? Yeah. Just use Express. Really? And that's how it works. So the person pays for their DSTV on the spot. It comes on. Then the person is excited, the person is hooked. Yeah. And the person's like, wow, how come I didn't know about this? So word of mouth has been huge for us because I think fortunately we focused on the user experience to make sure people are getting a good experience on the platform. And that has naturally reinforced people's acceptance of the platform. Yeah.
So I was going to say, it sounds like Ghanaians accepted expressPay from the get-go.
So that makes it sound a little too easy. Okay. So there are demographics that get the concept right away, love it, and can't wait to do it, and want to do away with their old ways of hustling to pay this bill, driving, standing in traffic, staying in traffic, all of that stuff. And then you have demographics, and that's easing a bit, and I'll explain why. You have demographics who are like, these online things.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about this thing. I'm not sure I want to put my card in. I don't know expressPay and so on.
Yes.
I'm not sure. So I've heard, but I'll try later.
We have hackers. We have people who will take your credit card details, all of that.
Yeah, so they don't fully appreciate or understand the nuances of it, but are just worried because of, things like Sakawa was also taken off back then. People were talking about Sakawa here and so on. So you had some people who were concerned.
Yeah.
But fortunately, that is changing because of the drive or the adoption of electronic payment solutions, including mobile money. Okay. Right? There's tons of volume over mobile money. A lot of people know mobile money. Mm-hmm. So they are used to now doing things digitally to some extent. Mm-hmm. I would say we are still not all the way there yet. You still have people who say, I still would rather just go to the bank and do this. Yeah. Right? You still have those. But we also need to know that there are enough people out there who want to embrace these solutions. It's our job to find those people. Yeah. It's not trivial, and we haven't found a silver bullet. But there's a balance. But I think if you do your targeted marketing well, you can figure out what your sweet spot is and then focus on that sweet spot and try and increase your penetration for that demographic segment. Yeah.
So I know you've mentioned one of your key challenges being basically getting partners on board, to believe in this idea and then say, we are ready, let's do this.
Yeah.
But in terms of other things, simple things like, say, office space, where you're working from your homes, we have instances where people were working from their parents' kitchens, all of that. Yeah. That ground up, building it to where you now have your plush office.
It's not plush yet.
That location.
It's not plush yet.
Well, now you have a place where you can actually say it's an office, you know what I mean? But it definitely didn't start out that way.
So we were kind of lucky because we had friends who had a company. So we were sort of perching. Yes. So we started out perching. Then we rented and code space from one of our families. And then we're there for a little while. Okay. And then we said, okay, the team is getting a little big. We need our own space. Yeah. And so that also eased things a little bit for us. So you don't start out with a large rent expense because that's money that just gets soaked up and there's nothing you can do about it. So starting out, you want to start out as humble as possible with the bare minimum you need. So you're keeping your costs down because you want to spend your money on business development. If you have some money for marketing, you spend it on marketing and so on. And so that was our trajectory where we purged for a little bit. Then we started paying even with our friend space a little bit. And then we were fortunate enough for family to give us some space for a little bit. Then we went to an official space that was ours. We were paying a landlord. Yeah. And then we moved to another place where we were paying a landlord, which is our current place.
What was that feeling like when you moved into your own place?
I didn't have any major sentimental value there.
Okay.
Because again, you're renting. Say you built your own office.
Yes.
Then you can feel like, yes. Yeah. But you're renting someone's space. So for us, it was just a necessity. It was a need for the business. We did based on business need. Yeah. So team size. And we cut our code according to our size. Right. So when we moved to a space based on what we could afford and the size of the team. But when you realize you're getting big and the space is getting too small now, you need to go to a different space. But fortunately, the team is also growing because business is growing, right? So you need a larger team and so on. And so that's naturally how we've progressed.
So let's delve deeper into the team. You started with a group of 4, right? Let's take it like that.
Yeah. And when we started, literally, we were doing everything. Okay. We were doing business development. We were doing programming. When the service went live, we're doing customer support. Okay. Everything. And then that was good, actually. It was good for us to do end to end. We were hustling, chasing. We started out with the airtime we were buying from vendors. So you're literally going to find a vendor somewhere, give him cash. And when I say vendors at the time, we didn't have direct relations with the big people like MTN, Vodafone, all of them, right? So you are going to the vendor who is the distributor, to find a distributor, give the distributor some 500 CDs cash. He sends you the electronic credits and so on. That's how we started, where you're driving somewhere, meet a guy with cash. You drive here, meet a guy with cash. That's how it started. Yeah. And then you graduate. And so you're doing everything. You're running around here. You're going here. You go back to the office. You're programming in the night, right? To build the platform. The next morning, you're meeting this business because you're trying to get them on board. Yeah. He believes that there's a massive team out there.
But it's actually just 4 individuals.
No, it was awesome. Yeah. It was awesome. Yeah. And then you gradually add, I think one of the things we did right was we started out with customer service. Okay. The first thing we did was we need someone who can be on the phones and can address any problems people may have because it's electronic payments, it's new. Yeah. People are not as comfortable. You want them to feel like they can reach you and have their problem addressed, whatever that problem may be. Yeah. Or even questioning about simple things like people didn't know what the dates on the card were. Some cards have both the valid dates and they didn't know what it was. People didn't know what a CVV was, right? Yeah. So you needed to be able to walk people through. So that was one of the things we did, right, where we started out with customer support. So our first staff were customer support staff, and then we gradually increased that team, and then that allowed us to continue the other things. Yeah. And then today we're about 40. So still a small company, but pushing hard. About 40 people in the team at the moment.
With the key areas, I'm sure, like key focus areas that you definitely need for a business.
Yeah. So for us, we still pride ourselves in customer service. So I think our customer service team is our largest team in the office. Okay. Then you have developers, you have finance, you have marketing, and so on, right?
How did you recruit these people?
So recruitment is, and we are still recruiting. We always want excellent talent. Finding good talent is hard. How did we recruit them? Yeah. We didn't have a single option. Some were referrals. Okay. Some we put out job specs on social media. Okay. So on WhatsApp groups and so on. And then people applied directly. Some actually came to us. Maybe they knew our company or we presented somewhere and they reached out to us and were interested. We interviewed them and then took them on board. Talent is still a challenge, I'd say, in terms of finding good people. We're still looking for good people. We're always looking for strong developers, especially. Okay. And we'll eat them up. We still want a lot of strong developers because we're a technology company. Yeah. So we are always open to hiring excellent talent. We haven't figured out the silver bullet. So it's all over the place. We're putting out job specs, asking colleagues in the industry how they hired people. We've done some presentations at some schools, so on, to try and get people in. Yeah. So we have some people intern with us. So it's a mix, I would say. We've even, for some positions, we've considered having HR companies try and put out job specs and get candidates for us. So we've tried all sorts. And then for some of our customer service support, actually, we worked with a small business owner who was finding candidates for us. And so we paid a success fee and so on. Yeah. So it's been a mix, I would say.
What are some of the early decision steps you took that has ensured, your success this far? So I think one of them is what you've just spoken about, making sure you recruit the right people. But aside the human factor, what else was a key decision you had to take?
I think one of our differentiators is customer service. And so to date, we still get very good feedback from our users about our customer support. In fact, today, I demonstrated our customer support to you, Nefa. So I think that was very important. Yeah. The other bit is we wanted to make sure our service stood out and worked, consistent, reliable. And so we built a platform to be very robust and to deliver and to follow up for the customer. We've had to make sure that we are the company that solves your problem, not sends you to the service provider. Majority of the issues that people may face, it's usually not the core expressPay platform itself. But what we do is we take it upon ourselves to reach out to that particular service provider to say, hey, we're calling on behalf of this customer paid for this service. They say there's a problem, it's not been resolved. We've literally sent a team from our office to go and find someone at ECG and take them to someone's house to address a postpaid billing issue. That's how far, that's not standard, but that's how far we've had to go. And so I think that's been a great point for us. It's been a great decision to do that. And we're going to continue to make sure we are striving to be as good as possible. Right. Yeah. I tell our team all the time, you're not just there to answer phone calls, you're there to solve the customer's problem. So it's not I've spoken to them and that's it. But you are actually following through and solving the problem so the customer is happy. Yeah.
Day on day, week on week, month on month, you were seeing the numbers, moving sort of like a hockey stick. Yes. And in some instances, actually, did that motivate or depress you? It depends on what the numbers looked like.
No, it always, I touched on this a little earlier. It always motivated us. So it's funny because an entrepreneur, your projections are always super high, right? And so we obviously didn't hit the super high projections we came into the market with, but it was, I think, the human factor, that feedback from users appreciating our service was always encouraging. And so when you added customers and so on, we were always excited by it. And we are still excited. One of the things I love is when I meet people and they find out I'm affiliated with expressPay. I love expressPay. I use it for everything.
Yeah.
Then they show me the app.
Yeah.
They log in, they show me all the transactions. I love that because it means we are really meeting their needs.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely not depressing at all. It's something to be excited about. I think, and I speak for my partners, we all embrace it. We still haven't found it, and maybe we've concluded there's no silver bullet.
Okay.
We still want it to be we want at least one person in every household using the expressPay.
Right.
We haven't reached there yet.
Right.
But we are still hard at it to see, and I think it's possible to get there.
Yeah.
At least within Ghana, and then we can look beyond Ghana as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you able to tell us how many users you currently have on the platform?
I think I can tell you downloads. Last I checked, I think there are over 400,000 downloads of the app, both across iOS and Android. I don't know the exact figure off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So that's exciting for us.
You mentioned you had a target you had set for yourselves coming in. So have you exceeded or you're
for
still...
downloads?
Yeah.
Our target was not really necessarily on downloads. It was looking at revenue and so on.
Okay. So are you there?
We're probably past it, but we didn't pass it in the time frame we anticipated.
Okay.
Right. So say we had projections for 4 years. We are now older than 4 years, right? So we are definitely past those numbers, but we didn't hit it in the time frame we thought.
Yeah.
Remember when we came in thinking 3 months, the service will be on. And then 20 months later, you're scratching your head wondering what's happening, right? So there's still a ton of opportunity. When you think of digital payments, what we do, we've barely scratched the surface.
Yeah.
Majority of the country is still cash.
Yeah.
So there's still a ton of opportunity to try and get people on. And part of it is also, it's awareness, right?
Yeah.
And it's expensive. Marketing in Ghana is expensive. Yeah. So getting as many people aware of the platform and then hoping that the people that fit, who naturally get it, would be easy conversions, and they need to work hard at the rest to bring them in. But it is an expensive process as well to acquire users. Yeah. So we are still hard at it.
You've taken some key strategic decisions. Case in point, recently you matched the transfer of fees, to mobile money operators. So what was the motivation for that decision? 2
things, actually. One, the market was at 1% for mobile money.
Yeah.
But people didn't necessarily think of it as we were different. Our economics work a little differently, especially when we do transactions from card to mobile money, right? When you're doing on mobile money, you're using the mobile money platform. Everything is on their platform. So the 1%, there's enough margin there. For us, when we're doing cross transfers, which is one of the things we are known for, a lot of people send money from their bank account to a mobile money platform or even across mobile money platforms. Yeah. Right, where you may have MTN and you may send money to Airtel Tigo or vice versa. Yeah. So for us, we have a cost when we are pulling the money. Yeah. And that cost is typically higher than the 1%. So that was one, right, where there was that disconnect. Yeah. But the market is at 1%. So we needed to figure out how we get to 1%. And then you find that banks and so on are also offering our service. Some of them use us, by the way. Okay. So they're using our service, but they were below our price point. And so in a way, even though you're making revenue from there, you are cannibalizing your core expressPay app as well. So we had to make a decision there. 2, our users. Okay. Again, we like to listen to our users. Some users were telling us, you are expensive, right? We're telling us expressPay. So we used to hear this. I love expressPay, but. Yeah. And we wanted to get rid of that but. Yeah. So everyone was telling us they love expressPay. And they would tell us but. Yeah. And that but was always about price. Right. So what we found was that our users didn't really care about the underlying economics. They didn't care what was happening and so on. All they knew was that when I do it here, I pay 1%. And so it was a tough decision for us because we had to essentially subsidize the cost. Yeah. And we are still working creatively to make it possible across by thinking of a mix of business segments. And you take a hit because when you do that, so for now, there is a marketing element in there. Okay. Right? Where we are sort of treating it's marketing, right? Yeah. To try and get people to be able to continue paying for these transactions at that price point. And I think that is generally remove the but. Shortly afterwards, a lot of people I love the new price point, right? So we're just shocking because even people who hadn't said anything about it are telling you they love that move. But it takes time for you to feel the full effect. And we still need to work with the underlying partners. Yeah. So your source of funds. So when you pull from Vodafone Cash, right? How much does it cost us to pull, right? When you pull from an MTN mobile money, when you pull from your Visa card, when you pull from your MasterCard. So we are still having some conversations so that the economics are sustainable. Right. But because the P2P space, which this is, operates differently from your typical merchant payment, where you show up at the shop and you put your card into a POS.
Yeah.
That merchant is paying a fee.
Yeah.
Right? And that fee is usually much higher than the 1%. But people don't, again, consumers are oblivious to it.
Yeah.
Which is okay. They don't care about those details. And so we sort of took that model and applied that model in the P2P space. So we had to re-engineer the way it works so that the economics make sense. And it's still work in progress, I would say.
Which brings me to my next question, actually. When the government took a decision to talk about or to open up mobile money interoperability, because that was sort of like your main selling factor in the beginning when expressPay. Well, for me as a user, I was happy with the fact that I could send, money to other networks, and I couldn't do that on my core telecom network. And then this decision comes, which allows me to do that on my core telecom network. So then in that case, why do I need to use expressPay? How did that make you guys feel? What were you thinking? Were you saying, oh my goodness, we're about to fold up? What was that like?
So remember, because our business is so diversified, because we offer so many services. So money transfer is one of the things we do.
Okay.
But you allow people to buy their airtime, to pay their DSTV, to pay for internet, to pay church tithes, to pay insurance. There's a whole host of business segments we cover.
Right.
So you can't on the back of that say, oh my God, I'm about to go under. Right. So that's one. Two is I think generally, on one hand, the mobile money interoperability and pushing at that national level is good for payments. But maybe what you can argue is there were different models. One model was to use GIPS to do it. Another model could have been to use some of the existing fintechs who were doing it to enable it. But that decision was made, and you have to live with it and make sure you can adjust. So there wasn't much we couldn't do much about that. But remember, there's also an experience. People love expressPay also because of the experience they have.
Yes.
So we haven't seen an impact on our numbers from an interoperability perspective since it happened. Our users are still using us, are still strong. In fact, and our pricing is great. So it's not had any significant impact, I would say. It's still growing. I know we follow the numbers and mobile money interoperability is growing. But remember, most of those doing that are using it from a USSD interface, whereas expressPay, you're using an app. So the demographics, I think, at the moment that we are appealing to are a little different, and that has shielded us a little bit from it. But generally, it's opening up more people's acceptance of electronic payments, which if you think about it, will ultimately have a positive effect for us, because a lot of people who say are in the formal sector are pushing money to the informal sector who may be using mobile money as their acceptance solution. And so they are now willing, when you tell the yam seller that I'll send them mobile money, they are willing to accept it. So it's sort of helping everybody.
So Curtis, it's quite a competitive landscape in Ghana with quite a number of fintech companies that are actually doing what you do. Yes. So how do you keep your head above the water? How do you ensure that you differentiate yourself from your competitors?
I think ultimately it's about innovating. So I almost feel like every day I wake up and hear there's another pay in town. Something pay, A pay, B pay, C pay. But we need to make sure we are innovating. For us, in our DNA, we're always listening to our users and our customers as well. So listen to them, listen to their needs, take their feedback and try and develop it and continue to innovate and give people better products, better experiences, give them what they need. If you give them what they need, you're going to continue to remain relevant. And I would say, again, I think we've barely scratched the surface in terms of the opportunity. Majority of transactions in the country are still cash. So there's a ton of room to continue to penetrate. So digital sort of increases relative to cash. For us, for instance, we're also going into other segments that we weren't in previously. And so, for instance, a lot of people know us for our app where you sit in your office, you sit at home and pay remotely. But we realized it's an opportunity in the face-to-face segment. So we now have POSs out where you can show up at the shop, where you can then pay by POS with your Visa, MasterCard, GH-Link card, American Express, what have you, and also QR. So we've developed an interoperable QR that will work across different bank apps or work across expressPay, and we are starting to deploy that as well. And so we think the market is interesting. There's a ton of opportunity, and you need to make sure you're continuing to drive and offer relevant products to consumers, and you will remain relevant.
Right. What are the future plans? Like, what can customers look forward to? Yeah.
So I think just the POS or the face-to-face segment is one of them. But even within our consumer app, we're going to continue to add interesting services. One of the exciting ones that's coming is for events. where people want to buy tickets for events, right? So imagine there's an event happening, you want to just purchase the ticket.
Yeah.
But when it comes to events, there are two things to solve for. One is the purchase, which is easy. You could always have paid on expressPay.
Yeah.
But the second part is when you get there, how do they validate that you paid?
Yeah.
So we developed a solution as well that will help them validate. So you show up, they just scan your QR code, you're good to go. You get in. So I think that'll be exciting. I think that'll be a big one for next year. We're going to have a few opportunities to use it in December, and then most likely open it up next year. So for a lot of the various shows that people are having, we think that they may naturally gravitate to listing them on expressPay, and it offers an end-to-end management solution for people. So that's one example. But there are other services we are going to offer to consumers within the app itself on the consumer side. So I just talked about the face-to-face segment where you're now going to start to see expressPay POS or QR code at various shops. So you go there, you can scan and pay. We've already started deploying. You're going to see more of that. One other thing we're looking to enable is remittance. Inbound remittance. So we have approval from the UK's Financial Conduct Authority to be able to originate from there. And so we're going to then terminate into bank accounts or mobile money accounts here within Ghana, but also into multiple countries. So we've signed an agreement with another company that would allow us to terminate into multiple other markets. And we will likely use that as a springboard for getting into some other countries with the services we have, be it the consumer business, be it the B2B business, be it our merchant acquisition business on POS and QR. So the future is exciting. I think there are a lot of possibilities. We just have to really take them on, be strategic about it, resource appropriately, and get it done.
Yeah. Fantastic. Very bright future.
Yeah. The torch is bright. We just need to make sure we sustain it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we have on the show what we call the Rockstars quote. And this is really anything that motivates you or keeps you going. And on behalf of yourself and your partners, what is the Rockstars quote for expressPay?
Let's make it happen. So that's my personal one is you're talking about a different idea. Or for instance, this idea, we discussed the event solution. Let's make it happen. I like to say that a lot. Yeah.
All right. So we hope you've enjoyed listening to our podcast. Our guest today has been Curtis van der Poy. He is the co-founder and CEO of expressPay. And like he said, make it happen. We'll catch you on the next episode. Goodbye.